So can we just go a little bit further? You mentioned, what was it? Squat, hinge, push, press, and carry as kind of the five. Was it? Do I have that right?
Push, pull, and carry. Yeah.
Um, and you're talking about getting that in two, call it 40-minute sessions.
Hmm.
So can you? This can be a longer question for you to answer, but can you give an
Hmm.
example of what you mean by push, by squat, hinge, push, pull, and carry,
Yeah.
and how to possibly squeeze in all that stuff? I mean, uh, and do like, because people are, well, how am I going to do all these different pulling exercises? How am I going to do all these different pushing exercises? So
Hmm.
can you
Yeah.
give? I mean, I don't want to put you out of a job, but presumably,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'll lay it all out. Yeah. So these are the five main compound movement patterns. Now, there are other isolation exercises. So, for example, if we're doing biceps curls or we're doing tricep kickbacks or, leg raises, I don't even know what you call these things anymore, but like leg raise machine and those sorts of things where you're working one joint at a time. That's like a single joint or isolation exercise. What I'm talking about is multi joint exercises that are relying on and are demanding more musculature per movement. So for example, a squat, right? I'm not only am I moving my legs, but if the bar is on me or the weight is on me or I'm holding the weight in my hands, whether it's in a goblet squat, it's on my shoulders, whatever, I am also requiring stability from my torso. I'm requiring my upper body. Everything is working. So that's why I bias more toward those sorts of movements because of efficiency. So we have the squat, right, which is primarily it's going to be a hip hinge or a hip flexion and knee flexion type movement. So I'm squatting down. There's
with a
obviously
little
many
bit of
var-
hip hinge if you're doing it more like a power
Yeah,
lifter.
yeah. Yeah, a little bit of hip flexion, right? We have to actually send the hips back at the same time that our knees bend, and this is one of the biggest squat flaws that we see or faults is trying to just not trying to not bend the knees, and so the hips go way back, and then we lose our balance. So that would be all of your squats. I kind of people debate is a lunge a squat? I mean, not technically because we tend to have very little hip flexion there, but I tend to kind of lump them in. So all of your lunge variations, whether it's rear foot elevated, front foot elevated, all of that stuff, all of your squatting. So that's that one category. Your second category will be your hinges, which is primarily a hip flexion dominant movement. So these are going to be, again, for jujitsu practitioners, like yeah, you're going to need this is one of the things to really develop because you need that hip strength. You need this to be really solid because the hips drive the whole body, right? And so these are going to be primarily your deadlifts and your deadlift variations, your glute bridges, your hip thrusts.
Kettlebell swings,
Yeah, I mean kettlebell swings tend to be a little bit more
higher volume.
uh, they're going to tend to be more of a higher volume, um, more glycolytic, right? They're going to get your heart rate up a little bit higher, typically those things, but it is still a hinge. And that's one of the biggest faults actually again that we see in the kettlebell swing is that people squat down. And so they're missing that like tension in the hamstring. They're missing that engagement. So that's one of the things that a lot of my folks that I help out at the Jiu-Jitsu Academy, I'm like, show me your kettlebell swing. Okay, we got some stuff to work on here. Really sending the hips back and using that power. So there's that. All the pressing motions. So a horizontal press, anything from a foundational push up to a bench press, for example. We have our vertical presses, right? So all of our shoulder presses and different variations thereof. We have our pulls, right? So typically things like our rows. Are going to be in there. And then we have our carries, all of our weighted carries, whichever way you want to carry, whatever odd object you want to carry. You can carry pretty much anything. And so a lot of these not only have crossover to, obviously sport, but life.
So can you just go a little bit into the weighted carries? Because I think most
Yeah,
people understand the first four categories if they've been doing a
sure.
kind of bodybuilding, but unless they're in kind of the strength competition field, they may not understand the benefits of things like farmers carries or I don't
Hmm.
know, trap bar carries or whatever kind
Yeah.
of carry that you're talking about. What do you mean by
Yeah.
a carry?
Yeah. So anytime I'm holding some kind of object, typically in my hands, although you can carry with a barbell on your back and take it for a walk or a yoke or whatever you want to do. But typically I'm holding the weight in some position. The simplest variation of that, which would be to hold two weights at your side, whether it's a kettlebell, a dumbbell, etc., shopping bags, you know, whatever it is, gallons of water. I mean, we can extend this out to a million different things, but I'm holding the weight at my sides, hanging down. It's requiring grip strength. And again, it's requiring my entire body, because I'm not only moving it, displacing myself and moving the weight, but I have to maintain things like stability. I have to be able to account for not putting the brakes on and kind of heel striking with every step, right? I have to be able to maintain some of that forward momentum. So it requires a lot of your body. And of course, the obvious would be your grip. Um, then we move to probably the next tricky variation, or the next advancement, I guess, in the progression, which would be holding things at in the shoulder or rack level. You can hold one or two. I can hold one weight in a farmer or suitcase position down at my side and one on my shoulder. And then, of course, the most challenging, typically variation, which is going to be some kind of overhead hold, because that's really going to challenge my thoracic mobility and my shoulder stability. I can do any kind of combination thereof. And as I mentioned earlier, I can carry weights, a big sandbag across the back of my shoulders. I could carry a bear hug bag out in the front. I can ruck. I could carry a backpack on my back. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. But in terms of building strength, stability, and really working your entire body, carries are amazing. And I think they're really underutilized in a lot of training.